Have you ever wondered what goes into your favorite brand's digital marketing strategy? I'm Tara, the founder of TJ Creative Agency.
And I'm Audrey, the creative marketing director of TJ Creative Agency. Whether you're an influencer, a business owner, a content creator, or just an overall creative person, we'll teach you how to create the perfect social media strategy and build your brand online.
We know.
We're recording now.
No.
We're live.
We're live. Anyways. Like you said, I don't know if I'll do anything with this because I don't know if this a meeting about social media education means anything
to anyone. You never know. I think people like to see just the team dynamic maybe would be cool.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll say some wise
gold in a lot of these conversations that we can sometimes forget we have.
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Anyway, so I started to fill out this thing. Audrey told me it would take 3 days, which she was.
When I talked to her this morning, I was like, you should start filling it out now because it took me 2.5 days to get it done.
The questions that I sent?
Yeah. I was I did it in spurts. It didn't take me 2 full work days.
Yeah.
I was there's just a lot of questions on there.
Okay, yeah, well, I'm going to do part 1, but I'm going to go ahead and say a lot of it, I did feel like I was some kind of restating what you already stated.
Oh, are you on the same document as me?
Yeah, and I just put mine in purple.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but I did get through the first one.
Sorry.
And I think, honestly, I didn't read every single thing that you said, but I just was what comes to my mind right now. Yeah. Then I got down to this part where it was part 1, where you were talking about how can I see who my audience is? Should I speak to who is already following me, or can I speak to an audience I wish I was in front of? Everything that you went pretty deep and thorough into that, and I feel if I add more, it's stupid. It's
some
already.
Of them, I did answer one question. I don't remember which one it was. You asked a question, and I just wrote, "I don't know."
You did. I haven't seen that yet.
Are there legal requirements?
Yeah, I'm I don't know much about the legality, so I was not sure.
Not sure.
We can leave that one out. I've already started kind of drafting different paragraphs and whatnot from what you've put in there.
Yeah. Also, okay, so I would like to know, Megan, what have you done so far?
I've been basically for lack of a better word, drafting, just sketching out kind of what it'll look like, kind of playing with different options of, first person, third person, speaking about our team directly, how much of an influence do we have on it versus how much of it is just objective and what flows better. And I think looking at what we're saying about it and the way that we're speaking, I think it makes sense for us to say within our agency, and kind of speak in that tone of voice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Rather than
I think not a fear necessarily, but just a thought around education as a whole. Kind of what you were talking about. I don't know how much it feels we should be this is from our experience. I'm almost nervous to blanket things and be this is exactly how you're supposed to do this, because there's probably a million different ways to get to the same result.
Exactly. And I think that a lot of the questions too are so broad. And I tried when I made them questions, I tried to make them a little bit more specific, but there's going to be a million ways, I think, to do a lot of the different things. Yeah. And by saying, this is how we do it, this is how we've done it, this is how we see people do it, I think it's a little bit of a safety measure of somebody being no, no one else does that. We're well, we do.
Yeah. I also, go ahead.
I was also thinking the worksheet part of it, making that more of some actionable steps, especially when it comes to helping somebody define their niche or find their target or find their avatar or whatever we want to call it. But you had given a few little steps and things that they could do that. But that's one thing I liked about the book, was that she kind of had these templates or steps for you to kind of discover that, because it seems so hard to break it.
That's kind of what I wanted to talk about too, is how we want to format this. Is it going to be, so it's going to be more of an ebook format, right? Mm-hmm. Is the plan. So everything's written.
Yeah, everything's going to be written. It'll be ebook. and can be downloaded. I think that we should have the option to like print,
Yeah.
and there's different ways to go about that. But as far as the worksheets, that was another question that I wanted to talk about too, as far as how interactive should they be?
I
Like, should
feel like
it be more like fill this out and like write down this, or would it be like posing a question and saying, you know, if you feel like this, kind of like Coke or Pepsi, like if you get more A's than B's, take this quiz and like maybe this.
I was picturing it like literally like a school worksheet where it's like whatever, like prompt a question, either like very specific things like this is how much you want to charge, this is whatever, like very like black or white, but also a mix of like almost journal prompts where there's like a question that makes you think a little bit, and then you have a section to like write it out of, you know, answering the question how you want to answer it. I feel like maybe a mix of things.
I do think that that's what like ends up happening is this becomes kind of a miniature journey of like self-discovery. I don't think anybody knows until they actually like do the steps or like actually write out the question or the answer.
I do think the journal, not the journal, the like worksheet parts are huge because I'm picturing this as more of like almost a self-help type of book, but anything that's, for me at least, and maybe it's just like how I learn, but anything that is written out for me is kind of, I'm like, oh, that's great. And then I forget about it 2 seconds later. So when I write things out, then I think it's more helpful, which is why I think it should be kind of a mix of that, like learning through writing, if you will. And also like,
from what's her, the girl that we had on the other day, like something that hers were pretty simple. Like it's not like a huge, like at the end of each chapter, here's 2 hours of work. Like,
right.
Since it is an ebook, maybe making them as, you know, as simplified as possible.
So that's like also what I wanted to ask. Where do we want, like, what kind of worksheets do we want, and where do we want to put them in terms of like just based off of these questions that you had written out, Megan?
Yeah, that was my question too, of where you guys even think they fit, because I think that for all of them you can put something
I think
in.
we do one at the end of each section.
Maybe especially if it's something as small as like a prompt of like take 5 minutes before the next question, and we just have to think about, since it's in an ebook format, like how to keep it interactive and intentional and not just here's this for the sake of doing this. You know what I mean? Because if it's downloadable.
Yeah, that's, I was kind of thinking about that too. Like I wonder if we should almost play around with links. Like I wonder if maybe we, not necessarily a Google Doc, but some sort of like at the front of the book, the ebook, to be like, here's all of your worksheets, and then just cue it at wherever the worksheet applies to be like, okay, go to this worksheet, and then you can fill it out. Like you can kind of have your choice whether you want to fill it out on the computer or you can print it yourself and write it out. But I think that might be easier than just like putting it like after each section, because I don't think the ebook would be as like interactive.
I agree. I think that I was thinking maybe even like QR codes or something like that, of like if someone's reading it like on a Kindle or on their laptop or on their phone, and then being able to go to another link, and then also having the option that if somebody wanted to purchase like a physical copy of it, then maybe there's a second like alternate version that has like lines and whatever if you want to write in there, just depending on what we want it to look like at the end. But I think that that's something that we can also decide once it's kind of more formed.
Yeah.
Have you looked at like templates, or are we making this from scratch? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that we should use a template. We should just pick, I mean, there's tons of options of where online to do it and where to publish it. And then we can put in like our own branding and logos and all of that. I think that the actual creation of it will be easy. It's going to be the writing and just, I think, structure of it that's going to take more time.
Yeah. Do you have any specific type of templates that you have found that you like?
I like the ones that don't look like a normal book.
Yeah.
Personally, I thought at the beginning I was going to like it more if it did look like a book and had like chapters and whatever, but I think that feels boring in the space of what it is that we do.
Yeah, that's fair. I haven't really looked at any. I don't even remember the last time I downloaded any sort of like ebook. All of mine are like nutrition books, so I don't know how much that is applicable to this in terms of layout.
So
I
do
was
you think,
also thinking too, with kind of the addition of the worksheets, if we also did like a call to action type thing of like follow 5 people and like look for this in them, like instead of having them physically write something down, maybe even just being like, go to your local blah 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 and see if there's a new brand that you like, kind of pushing them to do more and making it more of an activity with the ebooks, I think would also be
I
cool.
like that. I almost
Some fluff.
feel like that should be separate. Like there should be the worksheets and then maybe like an activity. And I don't think there needs to be both for each section.
Yeah,
but
not for
I don't know if I would want to intertwine them simply because like when I do stuff like this, I feel like I get out my journal and I'm like reading. And then when it says shit like that, I'm like, now I gotta get up. I gotta get my journal. I'm in the zone
yeah.
with my journal and I'm like, I don't want to, well, now I feel like I can't do it. Like it's almost, it almost makes me not do it at all.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yep. No, I know exactly what you mean. I almost wish that we were doing just the ebook and then selling a separate journal. And in the journal, we could.
Well, I was going to say, like, I almost feel like we could, depending on what these worksheets look like.
I think we could eventually compile them into a
Well, I was going to say we might, again, fully depends on what the worksheet looks like. If it's really not anything,
Mhm.
then we can't sell it by itself, obviously. But I almost wonder if we could do it like as 2 separate, like the ebook and the journal, or you can do a bundle and combine both of them. But it fully depends on like how much there is in this worksheet kind of book.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I like that. I like the idea of doing, oh, my thing is about to go out. But I like the idea of doing the bundle and having separate kind of pieces to it.
Where are we going to, looking back at this, all the questions, are we going to cut some of this out? Do we feel like this is all super valuable information? Do you know yet? Do we want to cut some of this out? Do we think that this is the most, or there's more valuable information in one area than the other? From what you're seeing and like as far as answers go?
The first section, like to me, I feel like this intro beginning section feels almost Q&A-ish. Like it kind of feels like it should almost be obviously not written out exactly like this, but it feels like these are just common questions, like frequently asked questions. So I kind of would like to format it in that way because I feel like they're a little bit scattered. I feel like the only through line in this first section is I'm considering being an influencer and these are all my concerns before I jump into it.
No,
And
I agree 100%.
The rest of it does feel more like outlined
Of how to do things?
Yeah.
Like part 1, part 2.
So I feel like, yeah, part 1 is like, and maybe we shuffle some of these questions around too. But if part 1 could just be like literally setting up. But I almost don't want to word it setting up because some of these people might already have like profiles. So like revamping or setting up, however you want to word that. Oh.
I agree. I think that there's definitely pieces of it that will be shaped down quite a bit. I think that the way that I just went about it when I pulled up like the notes that we had already taken and stuff, I just took it from my position of I'm not an influencer. And like if I wanted to be, what would I need to know? So that's was kind of my intention going through it and just started from point A and got through B, C, D, whatever. They won't all be this in depth at all. And I think that it's better for them to be shorter in a lot of the areas. Like I agree about number 1. I also think too, a lot of our recent blog posts have kind of been directly from this. Like even in part 3, how can I grow my audience? How do I find my audience? Like how do I create content? You know, we did that blog post and podcast about content pillars and stuff like that. Like I think there's a lot of callbacks that we can redirect people if needed, if there's a section that we don't want to go super in depth on.
Yeah, where we can be like, here's more info.
So more about that. Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
I also think visually it will look better that way too.
How many
I think-
pages do we feel like this will be? Like, how long do we want this to be?
So typically, ebooks of this nature are between 20 and 50. I was thinking somewhere around like 35
Okay.
or even just 30. And then it'll get longer or shorter with the insertion of worksheets or the removal of content, really.
On Creative Market, there's like ebook workbook templates that are like interchangeable for on Canva that like break down modules and stuff. Like diagram worksheets, checklist titles, funnel worksheets, worksheet roadmaps, like different types of formats, you know, depending on how you wanted to place them into the book. So that just, I feel like a picture, I'm very much a picture person. So like seeing it and being like, okay, now I can visualize, we can make this into that. We can create like a roadmap and do like step 1, 2, you know what I mean? Like visualize. That's where I get kind of like stuck is like, okay, here's all the information, but how does it
look? Yeah.
look? How's it
Do
gonna
we
look?
still want to when we were talking about having the idea of like, here's your business or here's your person, is that anything we want to do in the influencer book, or do we want to keep that more for the online education stuff?
The which one?
When we were like, the idea of putting a name to the business and then working through, or like a name to the person or whatever, and working through like, Anna owns a lemonade stand and like, here's what she did.
I
Do we
feel
want
like
any
that-
element of that or no?
Yeah, I feel like it's in here a little bit, right? Like the avatar, like type of situation of who am I talking to? I think it looks a little bit different as an influencer, versus a business. Like I think with a business, there's a little bit more of the financial side of like, where do they live? How much money are they making? Blah, 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 that kind of stuff. This, I think, is maybe more so on like the feelings of like, who am I talking to? How do they feel? Like, what are their issues? How can I connect with them versus how can I sell to them?
Okay, yeah, no, I agree. So my next question then, we have those forms that we give, during onboarding of like brand personification and brand whatever. Do we want to put anything like that in here? Of like, here's what we use with our businesses,
Would be
with
good. I mean,
influencers.
there's a lot of questions built into them.
Yeah, to kind of
I feel
prompt
like
them.
I don't know if we should use that, like actually send those out, but I do think we could pull from some of those things on like even to determine your niche, right?
Yeah, no, yeah, I didn't mean like send the actual Google form. I meant like for one of our worksheets, should we do like a finding your voice type form and like use questions from our personification of like check the boxes of like which we have like, colors and feelings and styles and stuff like that. Because I feel like anytime that you can humanize something and kind of illustrate it in a way that feels more tangible like that.
I was gonna say, I think those types of questions are easier for people to answer than, more literal questions.
Yeah, it does make it a little easier because I think sometimes I notice when we ask even clients and questions about their brand and stuff, like it's crazy to me how not in touch people can be with like what they want their brand to be like, look like, color, to feel like they don't know.
Yeah.
It's just I also think that it's the idea of people don't understand that a brand is more than just having a logo, and that does, I feel like, kind of apply to like an influencer. I almost think this worksheet would be like finding your personal brand would really be what this is about, and learning that your brand is really how you make your audience feel. Like at the end of the day, that's what your brand is. What vibe, what energy, what feeling are you bringing to the people who are looking at your content, looking at your store, whatever the situation. Like I think the word brand is just thrown around so much that everybody assumes it's only like the colors and the fonts that you use, but it's really like much more emotional than that.
Mhm.
I also think that's what an influencer is somebody that can embrace, like have a actual brand. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? You have to have this whole feeling that goes with who you are.
Well,
I
it's
think
also like, I think I'm kind of torn on the like my thoughts on influencing, because there is that side of it where it's like, yes, you have to be authentic. Yes, you have to be vulnerable. But to your point, where you have to be kind of a brand, you kind of have to be conscious and calculated in what you're posting. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of a very
thin line.
very thin line that you have to walk. Like, when we had Kelsey on the podcast, like forever ago, when she was like, in order to be a content creator, you kind of have to be planned out. You're not real. Most people are not just like taking a video and posting it in the next 5 seconds. You know what I mean? She was like, you kind of have to be a little bit planned out, a little bit
I think
calculated.
there's also areas of your life that, yeah, you can kind of like decide if you're going to share certain things.
Yeah.
That has to be somewhat calculated.
Which I think is also where people get confused on the niche idea. I think there's a difference between having a niche and like finding a brand or like a place for yourself or things that you want to talk about. You know what I mean? I think a brand is obviously, there's a through line, there's a feeling that you're making people feel, but it's also like you're able to have some privacy. You don't have to share everything. In a niche, maybe it's just a connotation, but the niche feels a little bit more boxed in and a little bit more like, I can only talk about these things. So I kind of feel like when people have been saying, you are the niche, like make yourself the niche, I think that's what they mean, is like find a brand for yourself, like create a brand for yourself. Like, I don't think it's really as like unpopular opinion as people think it is. I don't think it's as like crazy of an idea. All it is creating a brand for yourself and sticking to a brand versus like putting yourself in a box.
Yeah.
I also think it's a layer of protection too.
Yeah.
I feel like lately what you hear so much from influencers is like the mental health effect of it and how people are like, I'm showing you this, but like everyone always wants to see more. Even on Kardashians. I don't know if you guys are watching that.
Yeah.
The latest episode, Kim was like, Kanye didn't want to be on the show. I talked about Pete. Pete didn't want to be on the show. Like, I'm still talking about it, but I'm saying it from my perspective, but people always want more. Whereas if you're an influencer and you align with a brand or a niche or something, it's kind of that extra level of safety of they know me for this and I can venture beyond it if I want to, if I'm comfortable with it, but I can be safe in exploring this area without having to shine light on something that I don't want as public.
Yeah. I do kind of want to dive into that a little bit. Like, I think the niche is something that is like one of the biggest questions that we still get all the time. Oh my God, I get it in every single one-on-one call. It doesn't matter how much we talk about it on the podcast. It doesn't matter how many blog posts we write about it. It doesn't matter how often we post about it on TikTok or Instagram. Like, people are constantly like, help me figure out my niche. Do I need a niche? Like, it's just such a hot topic within content creators. And I would
like used as a way to help people like create like,
it almost feels like it has become,
then it's like it's overused.
it feels like it's become too much of a rule. Megan, you know how I texted you last week for the blog, and I was like, there's just so many rules out there that people do not know what to focus on. Like, there's so many people online telling them what to do. The niche is one of those things where it's like everybody's talking about it. Everybody has a different opinion on it. Nobody knows what's right or wrong. Like, I would like to kind of focus a lot of that on here and kind of decipher the difference between like building a personal brand versus boxing yourself into
a niche. Yeah. I also think because it's not like, I wouldn't say like the people that are really good at influencing, like their niche is like, it just is who they are. Like, I don't know how to say, like, I don't know how to help people discover that. I think that's going to be the hardest part, is like, how do you help somebody discover their niche? I look at like the Lacey girl, the Lacey influencer, she's different than a lot of other influencers in that her style is different. Her house is different. She like, you know what I mean? Like there's just things about her that put her into this unique niche, which I don't know if she strategized that or if that's just who she is and it became the niche. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I think you can become your own niche in a sense because you're just being who you are.
I always ask people when they have this like niche question, I always ask people, okay, what are 3 things? Social media aside, cameras off, you're just talking to people. What are 3 things you can talk about all the time? Like just 3 topics that you're really passionate about. Those should probably be your content pillars or be worked into your content pillars. And then there's like the personality layer, right? So I almost think that's the better way to go about it is find your content pillars. So like, I don't know, for me, it tends to be, I just use myself as an example a lot, but like confidence or like health and wellness or like workouts, whatever. But my personality is what makes those pieces of content different, you know?
Yeah, I think a niche is almost like a diving board, especially when you're starting off, because the more broad niches, which directly kind of contradicts what the word niche is, but like health, makeup, or beauty, whatever you want to call it, those are those pre-existing communities that if you can kind of latch onto one of those, you're able to springboard off of what other people have done. And then I think that after however long in that area and, you know, learning from that or gaining exposure in those areas, being even more comfortable talking about stuff, like being comfortable on camera and sharing your life, that's when you can also add that extra flair of, okay, now I know enough about this. Now I can kind of add more me into it and I can tweak it and I can make my niche more of a personality rather than just a subject or a category.
I also explain to people all the time, like, think of your favorite creators. Most of the time, they are not just educational creators. And if they are, you might like them more for the way that they deliver that educational content than just the facts itself. Because if you were just interested in the facts, you could easily go to Google and ask it a question. You could easily go to ChatGPT. There's a reason that you like these content creators, and it is always their personality.
I was thinking about this the other day. I forget who I was talking to, and we were talking about Hank Green and like Crash Course and how he was kind of like our original educational influencer because he had the YouTube and whatever. And anytime in class, like teachers would show that because it was his energy and he was captivating and it was the way he told things.
Fun. It was like a
and
fun
he was fun and exciting and relatable. And now he still does that on TikTok and people will tag him and be like, can you explain this? And it's just whatever, like why a magnet only works in certain.
I even think about like, I've been talking about personal training for a while, right? Like it's been on my to-do list for 2 years to get my personal training certification. And there's JPG, I think is his name on TikTok. I love his content and he gets tagged. It's kind of similar in the sense that people tag him in workouts all the time. And he's like, this is how you can improve this workout. Either switch like the order that you're doing these, or like he'll demonstrate a move and be like, this is exactly how you need to do it. And it's super, super educational, right? I also think he just has like a very calming way of talking and he's very easy to understand. But my point being that if I really only wanted to know like the correct order to put my workouts in or like how to do a split squat, I could Google how to do a split squat. But his way makes like it's easier for me to digest, which is another thing. Like I think it's easier to understand. I like the way he delivers the information. Like that's really why you're following someone. Because there's probably a million other people that do what he does, right? That are explaining how to
like that's what.
But there's a reason, and he has such a big following, and there's a reason that people go to him because it's his energy that brings them there.
I'll even say I was going down like the people following us. I don't know how, I was looking at it yesterday and there's like this older guy that's probably like my dad's age or older that's doing what we're doing, but he's following us and he doesn't have a huge following, but he has people that are, I mean, he has likes and comments and things like that, but it's just different because he's reaching such a different audience. Like,
you know,
like somebody that's in that demographic doesn't necessarily want to watch three girls talk about social media. They rather find, a guy like he owns a trucking business or something and doesn't, you know what I mean? Like there's so many types
Well,
of
it's even like this kind of speaks to the niche situation, but it's even like Stephanie, when we talked to her on her podcast, she was talking about social media, but it's like very specific to real estate agents. So it makes sense why maybe specifically a female real estate agent might go to Stephanie versus us.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Which I think this whole conversation also has to do with finding your target audience. It's knowing, like, at the end of the day, I think you said this too, Tara, like you really have to know yourself. If you don't know yourself and the content and the value that you provide, you're not going to be able to figure out who you're talking to, and who your audience is and who's going to connect with you. Because if I don't know myself and I'm like, these like 45-year-old rich wives are going to watch. No, they're not. Like, that's not who you know what I mean? Like, you have to know who you are and what you're talking to in order
definitely the avatar thing I think is really helpful for people.
I agree.
I also think too, with what you were saying about the personal coaching, an easy way to explain that even would be like you're a cycle instructor and think about your class versus, the other people who coach. And it's the type of music that you're playing and like the type of workout that it even is. And there's different people who are going to want to go to the different classes because of those. I have one of my best friends from growing up. Her older sister has 3 kids, and she, at some point in having they were all C-sections. And so she became like a postpartum fitness instructor, and like wasn't even that, I wouldn't even consider her an influencer, but she built her brand on Instagram. And she was doing like Danielle Jonas, like Kevin Jonas's wife, had reached out to her because it was such a targeted, I had 3 C-sections. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I'm working to get my body back. Let me help you. And because all of her, hashtags and her content and her links and everything were so directed towards that one specific lens, she was able to reach people who are looking for that specific thing.
Sidebarring on that, I've even thought if we are too broad, if we should hone in on our audience, which we've kind of talked about a little bit, but
I think it's hard because I think we have our client base that keeps us like alive and breathing and fed and paid. And then we have this whole other side that's just like people that want to be like us and not like be like us, but you know what I'm saying? Want that whole thing. So I don't know either, like how to balance that. I think our content from the perspective of like social should continue to like help other people. I think that's where you find the most joy in creating the content, is like teaching and those types of things. I think that's what comes the most natural. I think the clients will come based on like referral and things like that more than they will somebody seeing us on social.
I always think about that when I'm writing like the blog or the newsletter, because sometimes I'll just be, writing it in the tone of voice that we use and the tone of voice that you guys use in the captions and stuff. And then I'm like, this is also going to Dr. Patel and like Dr. Booth. And I'm like, that's such a different direction. Yeah.
It is.
So I think that's like one of the biggest things that people don't do. People just jump on and they're like, I'm just going to start making content without knowing who you're talking to. And also
I don't think we ever did know. I think that's what kind of held me back even until Audrey came into the picture, was like, I am doing what I'm doing and what I want to do for other people are 2 totally different things.
Right.
So,
yeah. I think influencers and businesses alike, like you have to know who you're talking to. And then from there, you're able to create more of a strategy of content pillars, what you're going to talk about, how many sales posts are you planning on doing, what are your main goals, everything like that. Like, I think that's across the board something that needs to happen when you start a profile. Again, businesses or influencer, it doesn't matter. You have to set these goals, but you kind of have to backtrack, which is maybe an easier way to explain it to people, because I think so many people are like, I want to start influencing, starts making content, puts it out there immediately. Like, backtrack it and be like, I ask this in my one-on-ones a lot too. I'm like, but why do you want to start influencing? Is it, if it's just for brand deals, like fine. If it's a way to monetize, fine. But you need to know why, because for some of them, it's like, I want to get, like, I'm a therapist. I want to get more clients. Or like one girl was simply like, I just want to help people. And I was like, okay, like it's going to look different for each thing, right? Like whatever you're trying to do on social media, like when people are like, I just want to get more followers. No, let's dive a little bit deeper. Why do you want to get more followers? What are you going to do with those followers? Like you have to know that. That's probably the first step, which is kind of what I mean by goal setting all the time, because that's going to completely change what you do, who you're talking to, what your strategy is, everything like that. Like I think there's just such a deeper part of creating content and being an influencer than just creating content and posting it, at least when you're starting.
I think so too. This is a broad subject. I think, Megan, are you overwhelmed?
No.
Yeah, we really just like went all over the place, which is fine.
I think that was good. We also have this recorded if we need to go back to it.
I was just going to say, I was like, no one's going to need this. And then we started talking and I was like, actually, I probably will use this because.
I know. For a second, I thought that we were doing a podcast.
You're like, wait, what are we doing?
You're like, hold on, what are we talking about?
No, I think it's
what
great.
is our, like when you guys look at our analytics, like on TikTok or Instagram, what is the demographic that makes up the most of our audience?
I can tell you. Let me
influencers.
pull it up really quick. In terms of like people, we have a lot of influencers or want to be influencers on TikTok, and we have a lot of social media managers. Anyways, our following doesn't really say like what they do, but it is mostly 42% is 18 to 24. 26% is 25 to 34. So like our main group is 18 to 34. And in terms of like where they're at, I really didn't see you guys.
Where are they at?
Anyways, in terms of where they're at, it's Austin, New York, Los Angeles, and then London, and then Melbourne.
Ooh.
That's on Instagram. Let me look at.
I remember when I used to write like my personal blog that I was doing for a little while, I had like 200 people reading it in Turkey.
Yeah,
it was always like interesting.
I had like random, you know what? One of our clients, almost all of them are Indian cities. And I was like, this isn't our doing. I don't understand how we're only.
Yeah, some of it, Doctor, when I'm on, it's so annoying. I'm like, how do I get Tehran off this? Like, nobody's coming from Tehran over here. I promise you.
Okay, let me pull up the analytics and go to followers. It says net followers minus 21,000. Something's glitching because we didn't lose 21,000 followers. That's so weird. I'm so confused as to why it just told me that we lost all of our followers. Anyway, 54%. So it's a little bit older on TikTok, actually. 25 to 34 is more than half of our following on TikTok. 35 to 44 is 15%. 25% is 18 to 24. And our top cities, where the hell is Johannesburg? That's our top city.
I've been there. Austria? Or Germany? I went there when we went through it.
12% from there. Athens, surprisingly 11%. Toronto is 10%. Another city, Nairobi, don't know
Egypt?
where that is. Is it? And Dubai is 9%.
Interesting.
Did you see that they banned TikTok in Montana? It was a while ago, but
where Hank Green is.
The whole state, you can't have it, or if you have it, you
so
just
I had read it's a podcast, who am I kidding? I had heard that, remember when there was Flappy Bird? They deleted it, but if you had it on your phone, it would stay on your phone.
Yeah.
I believe it's like that. Like you just can't newly download it. But then I had heard somewhere that like it'll go through enough updates that your phone, it just like won't work on your phone anymore. So eventually everyone will lose it, but I think it will take a long time
Mm-hmm.
to get
Hank
there.
Green did a video about it. He was, because he's in Montana, and he was like, there's not a special app store for Montana. So he was like, they have to do like a geofencing thing and whatever for when
Yeah, I read
new
that they're
users
paying
download it.
Apple and the Android store like a ton of money to take it off in that, which I don't know what
In that region.
but I'm
Yeah.
assuming that's what it is.
Exactly. But then he
I
was talking, he
heard
was
it
like, what if you live close to the like a border state?
border.
And you
Yeah.
just drive across and download it and then come back and like
That's what they were talking
doesn't
about on
make
the
any
podcast. They were like, you can either download a VPN for your phone or just simply go to another state.
Yeah.
Like just drive across state lines.
Yeah, I really don't know how they regulate that. Like I have a VPN that I use to watch UK Love Island in real time. And we even used it when we were abroad because we had Spanish Netflix, but we wanted American Netflix. And like there's workarounds to every system. And so it's like, are they going to find people who have TikTok in Montana? Are they going, like, what is the consequence?
Also, just sidebarring on the VPNs, love that they've really taken that stance. Like for so long, they were like, your privacy. And everyone was like, I don't give a shit about my digital privacy. And then they're like, did you know you could access different Netflix catalogs?
And everyone's like, okay.
And everyone's like, consider it done.
Yeah.
You're getting a VPN then.
I mean, we're just so slow to catch up with the times. Like it's not going away. Like just figure out how we're gonna do it. However,
I was a little bit surprised that Montana banned it because I thought that the like trial situation was so bad.
so ridiculous.
If anything came out of it,
I don't think anything did.
except for Montana.
Yeah.
For Montana.
Poor guys up there. They don't even have internet anyway.
Yeah, I feel like people go to Montana to get away from the internet in the first place.
No, literally, I've been begging my family to go to Montana with me. I'm like, we could just ride horses. And stay
live off the land.
I'm like, I think that's actually what I need to do. Is I need to, because I keep talking about living on a farm. Like,
maybe just go try it out first.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, maybe I should spend a week on a farm and see if I actually would like to live on a farm.
Yeah.
Because I have never been on a farm.
But I also didn't think that you would like cake cooking and you on your fourth cake.
And I'm doing, you guys.
What have you been doing with these cakes? Are you eating them?
I eat like a fourth of them and then they go in the trash.
You should do cupcakes.
No, because I'm only focusing on the decorating. But this time, so I'm going to make a Father's Day cake. And then, so that one will actually.
Your dad's coming.
Yeah,
right.
My dad's coming into town. And I was going to text like my spin group because sometimes people will bring like a loaf of whatever that they make or like cupcakes or desserts. And I'm like, what if I just start dropping off cakes at the spin studio? I'm like, enough people go in and out of those doors. So I might start doing that. I don't know. But this time I bought like.
Here, I'd pay you to make me a Father's Day cake.
What'd you say?
If you were here, I'd pay you to make Anthony a
Well,
Father's
I'm not good enough. I'd feel bad taking any money for this. But I was doing like from scratch cakes. And this time I did one from a box because I just wanted to work on the decorating. The top looked like shit, but the sides looked great.
Is the frosting hard to work with? Because that's what I think.
I just have a hard time with like the piping stuff, like the icing bags. Like that's the part. And also I just don't know what to do on the top. Like I'm not necessarily bad at it, but I just kind of wing it. And then I'm like, this looks like shit because I didn't have a plan going into this.
Did you see that girl that one cake company here that does those cakes like you're doing, but she did a black one? You should do all black.
And it was just better than mine.
It was so cute. It was like a black cake with like black piping. Black.
I was gonna do that with all white the other day, and then I was like, it's giving wedding, so I'll just add some color to it.
My cake party I did for my birthday in Charlotte, I swear I baked like 30 cakes because I got 8 boxes of cake and then like 9 different size tins. And for 8 hours, I was just filling the tins and putting them in. And there were like 7 of us and everyone only ended up doing like one tiny little tier. And so I just left Charlotte the next day and left my friend Allie with like 28 leftover cakes. I was like, you can do what you want. She's like, I don't want these.
You're like, well, what am I supposed to do? Take them on a plane?
No, exactly.